Due to a momentary curiosity, the local universe was forced to upgrade its dimensions in advance due to insufficient information, driven by cosmic consciousness. Various systems, abilities, and so on have emerged one after another. Accelerate growth through the method of survival of the fittest. The protagonist, Panshir, is a dying patient, in such an environment, relying on special talents. Killing thousands of tribes on Blue Star to provide for oneselfFeilu. Novel network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Sudden Incident. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Blue Star is a very beautiful planet, and when viewed in the universe, this water-blue planet shines like a sapphire in the universe. But even in its beautiful appearance, it cannot conceal the flaws and holes inside. The current planet is no longer what it used to be. The growth of population, the exploitation of resources, and various forms of pollution have finally made this planet unsustainable. Various resources are gradually depleting, various animals and plants are becoming extinct one after another, various types of pollution are nowhere to stop, and various natural disasters are also beginning to emerge. At this time, although some people in various countries have begun to realize it, there is no way to do so under the influence of the overall environment, and with it comes even more tense relations among countries. Small-scale conflicts occasionally arise. Fortunately, major powers exercise great restraint among themselves. However, other remote areas have become completely chaotic, with wars everywhere and the competition for resources becoming increasingly severe. The global atmosphere is starting to tense. I don't know when war will completely break out in this situation. Although the situation is not improving, it is still barely being maintained. However, this situation did not persist for long, and after terrorists detonated a nuclear bomb, the situation completely spiraled out of control. The nuclear war broke out completely, and after a nuclear bomb was detonated by a free country, the situation completely spiraled out of control. Major powers' nuclear bombs poured wildly onto enemy lands without money. In such a situation, one small country after another fell, nuclear radiation disappeared everywhere, and the population began to die on a large scale. The already scarce resources were completely depleted. At this point, all countries also reacted and urgently called for a halt to the war. After all, if we continue to fight, there will be no blue stars left. But although the war has stopped, by this time small countries have successively fallen, with nuclear radiation everywhere on the land, and some island countries either completely sunk or turned into wasteland. But at this point, due to the depletion of resources, the population is already less than 1/10 of what it used to be. Moreover, due to radiation, the population is still decreasing, and due to the lack of resources, there is no way to deal with such a situation. At this time, the remaining countries were only the Dragon Country, the Brown Bear Country, the Free Country, and the remaining humans from each extinct country formed a united alliance. Faced with the current situation of Blue Star, due to the lack of resources, there is no way to even manage it. At this moment, someone suddenly proposed that since the current Blue Star no longer has resources, but there are resources on other planets in the universe, resources can be extracted from other planets to govern the Blue Star. Soon this proposal was adopted, and at the same time, the resources for Blue Star promotion were gathered to build a rudimentary version of the spacecraft. Beginning the era of space, resources are gradually being extracted back to the Blue Star, and urgent efforts are being made to govern the entire Blue Star. At the same time, humans are also beginning to recuperate. At the same time, driven by various cosmic resources, the technological level of Blue Star has also begun to rapidly improve, and the governance of Blue Star is also progressing steadily. At the same time, various animals and plants also began to emerge with the help of technology, reproducing on the Blue Star. At the same time, new laws have been issued by various countries, and they have completely banned the exploitation of resources on Blue Star. Blue Star is also beginning to recover, and the population is slowly recovering. At the same time, due to the lack of resources, the population is showing explosive growth. There is no shortage of resources, and the development of technology has made human life much better than before. At the same time, the extraction and exploration of resources in the universe are also steadily progressing. Time slowly passes by, driven by technology. Human curiosity is also being amplified, and some have begun to explore beyond the universe, but what humans don't know is that danger is also quietly approaching. Exploration is progressing slowly, but finally, under the influence of time, a spacecraft has reached the end of this universe. With one jump, it will burst out of this universe and enter another place. The command was quickly issued, and the spacecraft began to charge up. In an instant, it jumped out of this universe, and what caught the eye was the even more brilliant Milky Way. At this moment, before humans had a chance to cheer, the world had already fallen into darkness, and all living beings had fallen into a coma. The entire universe has fallen into darkness, and at the same time, the entire universe has begun to shrink in the direction of the blue star. Countless planets are beginning to merge with the blue star, and the area of the blue star is also increasing. At the same time, a cosmic energy filled the entire blue star. I don't know how long has passed, but the entire universe has merged with the blue star. At this moment, light reappeared, and the unconscious creatures also regained consciousness, while also beginning to receive information transmission from consciousness in this universe. The original universe was under protection, which could protect the life of the universe from being invaded by foreign universes. At the same time, the universe also needs to upgrade its dimensions, but because humans have walked out of the rules of this universe and assumed that this universe has entered the interstellar era, protection has also disappeared. At this time, the dormant cosmic consciousness of this universe has also begun to awaken and upgrade its dimensions. However, when the consciousness of this universe awakened and discovered that human error led to the disappearance of protection, the universe began to upgrade its dimensions in advance. However, because it was advanced, the foundation of the universe was not enough, so the consciousness of this universe urgently blocked it, and at the same time, introduced cosmic energy to baptize this universe. Survival of the fittest accelerates growth, while consuming cultural heritage to assist creatures that have successfully baptized and adapted to cosmic energy, endowing them with a talent and ability, and organisms that cannot adapt to cosmic energy will evolve into monsters. Hunting these monsters at the same time can obtain energy for upgrading cultivation, and so on. At the same time, the blockade of this universe is not continuous, only for 10 years, after which this universe will be exposed and connected to other universes. If the creatures in this universe do not resist the invasion from other universes, the consciousness of this universe will dissipate, and as for the creatures of this universe, they can only live and die on their own. At this point, everyone had already understood the situation and began to panic, but this situation did not last too long. The terrifying cosmic energy has completely swept across the entire blue star, and all living beings have begun to accept the baptism of cosmic energy. On a seemingly ordinary mountain top, deep underground, there is a cave. In the cave, a metal door is embedded on the wall, and inside the door is a very large room with a lot of instruments placed inside. On the other side, there are 20 or 30 instruments that resemble hibernation chambers, all of which contain people of all ages and genders. However, most of the indicator lights that were installed together have already turned red, indicating that the people inside have died. However, there are still a few instruments with green indicator lights. However, if no measures are taken, these people may also die soon. At this moment, the crazy cosmic energy swept through this space like a gust of wind. Faced with this sudden situation, several people who were barely alive died without any action in this intense situation. But there are exceptions to everything, and among these people, a young man has always been alive. However, facing the baptism of cosmic energy, this young man did not die. Instead, his life curve began to rise wildly. In no time, the energy of the universe has already passed. At this point, except for the few people who died again, they were still in their original state, but by this time, the boy had already reacted. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. The Confused Future. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the darkness, a consciousness slowly woke up. Who am I? Where am I? This special young man slowly opened his eyes, empty and lifeless. As his consciousness slowly recovered, the upper eyes also gradually regained their radiance, memories also slowly come to mind. My name is Panshur, and I am a patient. I don't know when I started getting sick or what kind of illness I got. All I know is that my body is slowly weakening, getting weaker and weaker. In the end, I can only rely on instruments to maintain my life while lying on the hospital bed. My parents love me very much, but I don't know how to treat my condition. Unable to do anything, my parents signed a document for a human cryopreservation experiment. Simply put, it means freezing some patients who are currently incurable using special methods and thawing them when they can be treated in the future, but now this experiment is not very successful. I don't know if it will thaw and wake up after freezing, or if it will just die, but my parents still signed it, seeking a chance for me. The last memory is when the rock was about to freeze. The parents looked at them with their eyes, and then they didn't remember anything. Panshur's memory had just recovered, and a wave of positional information rushed into his head. The pain filled Panshur's brain, but it didn't last long, and soon disappeared as Panshur received the information. At this point, Panshur had already understood his current situation, but his emotions were very complex. While feeling happy, there is also a faint sense of disappointment. Although I have recovered from my illness now, it is not the era I have known, and my parents are probably no longer there. Although I had anticipated it when I was frozen, it was still very sad when such a situation really happened. After a while of mixed emotions, Panshur forced himself to calm down. After all, the current situation is also extremely complex. After all, my current self is like an antique, so I quickly sorted out the situation in my mind. Fortunately, the information provided by cosmic consciousness was very comprehensive, and soon Panshur had a rough understanding of his current situation. However, I am even more worried about my own situation. After all, the current situation is like the novel I used to read, but when all of this really happens, this situation is so unreal for Panshur. However, such thoughts had just risen in Panshur's mind. A panel that looked like a game before me had already appeared in front of me. Sex name: Panshur, human, age 16, sleep time not counted, skill Xianyuan skill, beginner level, physical fitness 1-10 for adult humans, spirit 5-10 for adult humans, talent. Dreams come true. Consuming energy can turn imagined non-life form items into reality for personal use only, as it cannot directly form combat power. Rewards are free once. Ability: Guardian Spirit. Pangu, unique, unable to summon. Kai Tian Shen Axe, unique, unable to summon. Creation Jade Butterfly, unique, unable to summon. Chaos Qinglian, unique, unable to summon. Energy: Zero space. None. Maul. Panshur was also very surprised when he saw his panel. After all, his ability was a guardian spirit and he turned out to be the Pangu great god. Although he cannot summon it now, this should be the strongest guardian spirit. Although the strength of the guardian spirit is determined by oneself, it does not affect the strength of Pangu, the great god, and although his talent may seem very rubbish at first glance, it is very powerful in the eyes of Panshur. After all, I have experienced the era of the information explosion, and everything from that era has disappeared into the war. People nowadays no longer remember it, but nowadays, due to development reasons, people are very lacking in entertainment, so even if they use their talents, no one will notice. However, Panshur was not happy because he had just woken up and his body had not yet recovered. He was very weak and had not reached the level of a normal person. This kind of opening is very unfavorable for oneself. But fortunately, my current location is very hidden, so there is no need to worry about safety issues for now. However, Panshur still began to consider how to use his talent. After all, there is only one free opportunity, and then he will have to spend energy. But now I am too weak and weak. Even if I have something too good, I won't be able to use it, and now what I need the most is something that can grow my body and mind. This is how I can move and earn energy, otherwise I won't be able to even move now. What else would I think? After understanding the current situation, Pan began to search in his mind for things that could not only give him combat power but also ensure his own safety. After all, his own safety is the most important thing now. Due to just waking up, the mental state was not very good, and then he received a lot of information. However, his mind was still very chaotic. Pan forced himself to calm down and spent a long time searching in his mind for things that could help him get rid of his current situation. After thinking back for a while, Pan finally thought of something that could help him get rid of his current situation, and his combat effectiveness was also very impressive. It's the demonic fruit in the anime I've watched before, which can instantly make the person who eats it have combat power, and the fruits of the animal series inside happen to be very suitable for their current situation. However, Pan is not in a hurry. After all, he only has one chance to activate his talent now. If he only exchanges one fruit, it can solve his current situation, but he himself was very at a disadvantage. Faced with such a situation, Pan began to think of a solution. At this moment, I suddenly thought of a post I once saw online, and this person's idea was also very good. His idea was to make people become pillar like Huiying. However, what is sealed inside oneself is the devil fruit tree, which allows oneself to possess all the power of the devil fruit, and in this case, it can also solve the side effects of the fruit, which is very perfect. After thinking about this, Pan realized that it was feasible. Although he didn't know how the devil fruit came from, now he is using his talent to directly manifest it, so there is no need to worry about his source, so this idea can be realized. Thinking of this, Pan didn't hesitate and directly activated his talent to imagine what he wanted in his heart, and in front of him, the light began to flicker. Slowly a cluster of light began to emerge, and then slowly merged into Pan body. Obviously, the talent has been successfully activated. Pan quickly closed his eyes and focused his mind on his own body. Slowly, the image of a tree began to become clearer. The image of a very tall tree slowly became clear. There were countless fruits densely packed on the tree, and each fruit looked very full, obviously already developed. However, this is also very normal. After all, this free talent stone must be the best, so it is directly the fruit that has already grown, so that you can use it directly. Pan opened his eyes and found that the panel in front of him had also changed, and his body began to have power emerging, and his mind began to become clear. Obviously, his body and mind had been strengthened. Sex name: Pan human, age 16, sleep time not counted, skill Xianyuan skill, beginner level, physical fitness 10 for adult humans, spirit 50, 10 for adult humans, talent. Dreams come true. Consuming energy can turn imagined non-life forms of objects into reality for personal use only. Ability: Guardian Spirit. Pangu, unique, unable to summon. Kai Tian Shen Axe, unique, unable to summon. Creation Jade Butterfly, unique, unable to summon. Chaos Qinglian, unique, unable to summon. Tree of Ability Energy. Zero Space. None, Maul. Pan saw that both his physical and mental health had been strengthened on his panel, which was 10 times stronger, and the devil fruit tree inside his body was also displayed on the panel. However, the name has become a tree of abilities, and Pan didn't pay much attention to it. After all, this is a product of his own talent, and it's normal to have any discrepancies. After all, this thing was only fictional before, and now in reality, it's normal for names to have discrepancies. Now Pan feels the power of his body, no longer feeling weak as before, and his illness has been completely cured. This makes Pan very happy. After all, he is finally a normal person and his life is guaranteed. Qingming outing in happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. The End of the World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pan really wants to go out for a walk now. Thinking of this, Pan did not hesitate to feel it and immediately activated its ability, just as Pan turned into a particle of light, penetrating the glass of his freezer and flying outside. His body condensed again without any pause. Obviously, there is no problem with activating the ability. However, when Panshir stood on the ground, his body still couldn't help but stumble, but this situation is also normal. After all, Panshir has not walked upright for a long time. Although there are no physical problems now, there is still a process of adaptation. Panshir slowly stabilized his freezer and began to walk slowly, restoring his mobility. Fortunately, there were no physical problems, so Panshir was able to walk normally after supporting the freezer for 2 laps. Panshir let go of his hand supporting the freezer and walked slowly, while also moving his body to adapt as soon as possible. After all, he had not been doing this kind of activity for a long time. Fortunately, Panshir's body has now recovered to a very healthy condition, and the body bonus is only normal. Otherwise, Panshir's adaptation time may have increased, as he has a very strong force all at once, which cannot be adapted in one go. After slowly moving his body, Panshir also began to observe his current environment. The surrounding environment is pitch black, with only some indicator lights on top of the freezer still connected. However, in this situation, it is difficult to see the surrounding situation clearly. Panshir also understood this situation, so he didn't think about restoring power or anything. After all, even if there is electricity after such a long time, the lighting facilities are probably already broken. Panshir extended his palm and with a movement in his heart, his entire hand had turned into a particle of light, illuminating the surrounding environment instantly. I saw a steel room in front of me, and next to me was my own freezer. There were many more of these freezers, but only sporadic ones had indicator lights on top, but it has also turned red, indicating that the people inside have died, and most of the freezer compartments no longer have indicator lights. Obviously the people inside have also died, and it is unclear how long they have been dead. Panshir was not surprised to see such a situation. After all, he was already very lucky to be alive. Retrieving his own abilities, the environment once again turned dark. Panshir sat down in his freezer and pondered his future plans. After all, the current environment can be said to be very bad. In such a situation, if one dies, there is nothing more. But now that I have lived and recovered my health, and my abilities are very good, however, Panshir is not happy anymore. After all, in the past, novels and the internet were not for nothing. In such an environment, there are many amazing characters, and it can be imagined that there will also be many Lao Lu. Therefore, I must be careful now and not be reckless, and there are many opportunities in such chaotic times, such as becoming immortal and Buddha, immortality, and so on. Panshir couldn't help feeling a little excited at the thought of this, but he quickly calmed down, and a sense of loneliness slowly surged up in his heart. A sense of alienation emerged on Panshir's body. However, in just an instant, Panshir had already regained his composure. After all, time is very tight now, and there is no time for him to grieve for spring and autumn, and since I wake up in such an era, I must live better, bid farewell to the past and embrace my own future. Just as Panshir was thinking, a series of roaring sounds echoed inside the surrounding freezer. The sound echoed in this pitch-black and spacious room, and Panshir was also surprised. However, he soon realized that these corpses had already mutated, and at this moment, Panshir also realized that he didn't have the energy yet, and these locked monsters were just right for him. Thinking of this, Panshir stood up and came to the nearest freezer. His right hand lit up and he watched the monsters inside through the glass above. Panshir was ready to be disgusted, but he was noticeably stunned when he saw the monster inside. The monster Panshir inside has been seen in many movies and TV shows. Isn't it just a zombie? After seeing such a situation, Panshir also felt relieved. At least he knew what it was and there was no danger. The monster's appearance had already been seen, and Panshir no longer had any psychological pressure. With a thought, the metal inside the freezer moved and instantly pierced the zombie's brain. The zombie's roar stopped after being pierced into its brain, indicating that it had completely died. After seeing such a situation, Panshir felt relieved. Obviously, it was the same as the zombies he knew, and there were no surprises. At the same time, the energy had also been received, with 10 points. Seeing that nothing unexpected happened, Panshir also began to slaughter, walking in front of each freezer and using his ability to pierce through the heads of each zombie. His energy also rose synchronously. At the beginning, it was still killing one by one, but as the amount of Pancher's ability was used, the speed of killing also began to accelerate. Before long, all the zombies in this room had already been slain by the rock. At this moment, Pancher also wanted to go out and take a look, so he came to an iron gate. However, due to time constraints, the gate was covered in rust and obviously couldn't be opened. However, Pancher didn't pay attention and activated his ability to directly pass through the gate. After leaving the gate, a small square caught the eye of Pancher. With its ability to illuminate the square, it was discovered that there were many instruments on this small square, but they were all broken and Pancher couldn't understand what they were, but there are exactly 10 gates like the one just came out of Pancher around the square, including the one behind me. Obviously, behind these few doors, there should be freezers, and Pancher didn't hesitate. He killed the remaining 9 zombies in the rooms, and there were no survivors. Obviously, only Pancher was quite special. Pancher saw that there were no more zombies, and at the same time, Pancher wanted to go out and take a look. With the ability to activate, the rock melted into the mountain and headed upwards. Before long, the rock came to the ground, but it did not rashly walk out. Instead, it slowly floated up and sensed the situation on the ground. After evading a few zombies, Pancher quickly rushed out of the ground and his body quickly turned into light suspended in the sky. At this moment when Pancher looked down at the earth from above, he could intuitively understand how serious the situation was. The land reflected in the eyes of Pancher had no trace of architecture, only withered yellow soil with zombies wandering on it. Fortunately, there was still a forest behind Pancher, which was very large and could not be seen at a glance, and the place where Pancher came out happened to be at the junction of the forest and the earth, so there was no sign of any buildings underground. Moreover, although the forest is very lush, Pancher does not relax at all. After all, previous information has already revealed that many wild animals, as well as other snakes, insects, mice, and ants, are still alive and have evolved much more than humans. I don't know how much danger lurks in this quiet forest. After observing for a while, Pancher opened a door behind him and returned to the underground building. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Survival through effort. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There is no place to go to the current Pancher, and according to the information, there are only broken buildings on the ground now, and all resources have been confiscated. Everything you want now needs to be exchanged with energy in the mall. The cave where Pancher is currently located is at least not broken, and Pancher also needs its own base, but now this place is not good enough. Pancher still needs to be cleaned up easily. I cleaned up the monsters inside before, and the energy of the rock is already 10,000, but this energy is obviously not much. Pancher threw everything in the entire base into the recycling bin, exchanging it for 200 energy, and the entire base suddenly became spacious. The Pancher's ability to activate immediately melted the entire base's metal, but it did not fall down. Instead, it slowly leaked out its original color, and the dust and rust on it fell off. However, Pancher did not stop. His hand pushed a door in the air and it appeared in the air. Pancher maintained his ability and walked inside the door, opening another door on the other side, connecting the outside world. Pancher returned to the base and waved his palm, causing a strong wind to blow large amounts of smoke and dust into the space, which was blown out. In no time, the entire space became completely clean, and the air became fresh. After cleaning the base, the stone was collected and opened the mall, where it exchanged 500 energy of steel. In an instant, a large amount of steel appeared in front of us, and the steel in front of us melted into liquid. At the same time, under the control of the rock, it slowly covered the entire surface of the base and was reinforced. However, just like this is not enough. After all, one also needs to breathe, and one cannot always replace oneself with ability. The rock controls the steel liquid to spiral through the mountain, and in no time, it penetrates the surface. However, Pancher did not have ventilation openings on the ground, as it was easy to expose. Therefore, Pancher allowed liquid to enter and penetrate the entire tree from the roots, creating tree holes on the crown. simultaneously controlling the liquid to transform into a hollow tube. In this way, ventilation pipes are built one by one, and because the ventilation openings are on the trees, they can also avoid being discovered by people. At this point, the renovation of the base by Pancher has been basically completed, but there are still some details that need to be improved. Pancher also built a toilet in a space that was originally placed in a freezer, and in another space, he built a pond and exchanged 200 energy of water into it, making it easy for himself to use later. Pancher also exchanged a large battery, wires, and lights, which were installed inside the base, at the same time, using his ability to fully charge the battery, turning on the lights, the base also lit up. However, due to the continuous activation ability of Pancher and the busy schedule, he suddenly felt very tired. After all, Pancher's physical strength was only within the range of a normal person. However, Pancher had also come up with a solution, and when he activated his talent, the energy of 2000 suddenly disappeared. However, Pancher had an additional pill in his hand. This pill is the solution that Pancher came up with, which is exactly the Jean Shui Dan. In the world of immortality and chivalry, the reason why Pancher wants to exchange this is because although there are other things that can enhance one's physical strength, after all, one is a mortal body and has been frozen for a long time. There must be many impurities in one's body, and this pill is just right. It can train your body, strengthen your roots and bones, and also enhance your physical strength. It's so great. Pancher took the pill and came to the pond he had set up before. After undressing and entering the water conservancy, he took the pill in his hand. A burning sensation suddenly rose inside the body, but in just an instant it turned into a warm and comfortable feeling, and at the same time, a wave of energy rippled inside the body. Suddenly, waves of black mud-like substances were expelled from the pores of Pancher's body, accompanied by a foul odor that began to spread on the surface of Pancher's body. In no time, the rock was completely covered, and it was still a thick layer, accompanied by some dark red blood and other impurities that were discharged. Time slowly passed, and the feeling inside Pancher's body slowly disappeared, and Pancher's feeling also slowly returned. However, before Pancher could open his eyes, a foul odor had already filled Pancher's nasal cavity, causing him to feel nauseous. However, Pancher also understood the current situation and quickly reached out to start cleaning his body. It took Pancher a while to clean his body. After landing, Pancher exchanged a set of clothes to put on, and then activated his ability to completely cover the space with soil before exiting. At this point, Pancher checked his current physical strength and found that his physical strength had reached 500 on his list, while his mental state had also reached 400. Moreover, Pancher clearly felt that his body was now more powerful and relaxed compared to before. The current Pancher has gained combat power, but he did not immediately go out to kill monsters. Instead, he spent 5 more points of energy to exchange for a bed and bedding. Pancher lay on the bed, but he didn't rest either. Instead, he gathered some steel and condensed it into 5 circular saws, giving his soul the ability to activate the soul fruit. Suddenly, faces appeared on these 5 circular saws, and they all said in unison, "Master." Although Pancher was very curious about this situation, he didn't want to explore anything and directly ordered, "You can go out and hunt the monsters outside later." "Good master," said the circular saws. After the Pancher's activation ability opened up and connected the outer space, the circular saw flew out of the space. After closing the space, Pancher has the ability to activate and observe the situation of these circular saws. After seeing these 5 circular saws go out, their bodies start to spin rapidly, making a buzzing sound. Just listening to the sound can imagine how terrifying their cutting force is. The circular saw swiftly shuttled through the monster's neck, and the entire monster's head had already left its body. Moreover, due to the attraction of the sound, monsters from afar were constantly converging towards it. After seeing such a situation, Pancher turned off his abilities and ignored them, allowing them to kill monsters and earn energy points on their own. Pancher didn't rest even lying in bed, but opened the channel inside the mall and watched it. After all, Pancher also wanted to understand the current situation outside. After opening the channel, Pancher found that everyone could only send one message, but this could not stop people's enthusiasm for sending messages. Pan Sure roughly browsed through it and found that everything was posted on it, but there was no important information. However, this situation was also expected by Pan Sure. Even those who post messages here to show off are not very powerful figures, and the most powerful ones are only those who have historical generals as guardians, but they are not very powerful generals either. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Formal start of cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After browsing for a while, Pan Sure became even more determined to be cautious and cautious. After all, he could have a guardian spirit like Pan Gu, and it's hard to guarantee that there won't be other 3,000 demon god guardian spirits appearing, let alone other powerful characters, and even famous generals in history cannot be seen, which is already very indicative of the problem. However, Pan Sure still found a problem, which is that countries are sending messages to summon their citizens. But there are very few people responding to the call. However, there are still quite a few responders from the Dragon Kingdom. After all, the unity of the Dragon Kingdom is also well known, while there are very few other countries. However, this situation is also normal. After all, in the current situation where military supremacy or even immortality is no longer a dream, who wouldn't want to take a chance in such a situation? Moreover, many people outside the country are also recruiting people to form their own small groups. However, Pan Sure has no idea about this situation. After all, his current situation is special. Although the country is worthy of trust, a heart of defense against others is indispensable, so Pan Sure didn't want to join any organization, and he also believed that there must be many people who work alone like himself. However, exposure in the future is inevitable, but at that time, I already had enough strength. After all, what I lack most now is time. Thinking of this, Pan Sure no longer thinks about it. After all, the main focus of his current self is still on developing himself. Pan Sure saw that the energy on his panel was still growing, but he didn't intend to stay any longer. After all, he still wanted to kill monsters and increase his combat experience. Thinking of this, Pan Sure stood up and activated his entire body to melt into the wall, heading towards the ground. In no time, Pan Sure's entire body had already leaked out of the ground. However, Pan Sure was not in a hurry to enjoy the scenery. He had the ability to launch an axe and appeared in his hand, with his eyes looking around and his body tense in a defensive posture. However, because the circular saws had already cleaned up the surroundings before, and when they sensed the arrival of the rock, the circular saws flew quickly to the side of the rock. At this moment, Pan Sure finally looked around and saw that the environment was no different from what he had seen before, except that there were a few monsters missing from his surroundings. But by this time, the monsters had already gathered again. After all, they had already discovered the rock. Although Pan Sure felt a bit anxious when he saw this situation, he still forcefully suppressed this emotion. After all, this situation may be his future life. If you can't even pass the level in front of you, then you won't be able to become a strong player. At the same time, Pan Sure also ordered the circular saw to not pay attention to defending its surroundings. While Pan Sure swung his large axe towards a monster charging in front of him and then swung it away, the axe cut through the monster's body, splitting it in half. Black blood splattered all over the ground, and the smell of blood filled the nostrils of the rock. A nauseating feeling surged in my heart. Without enough time for Pan Sure to vomit, another monster had already arrived in front of Pan Sure. Pan Sure quickly swung his injured axe to chop down the monster to avoid getting hurt, and the monster kept going without giving Pan Sure any time to react. Pan Sure can only wave his axe to protect his safety, and in such a situation, there is no time for Pan Sure to react to other situations. As time passed, Pan Sure also killed many monsters, and the discomfort in his heart before was gone. After all, he had chopped too much and these monsters were still in human form, so Pan Sure no longer has much reaction to the killing. After all, after experiencing the discomfort in his heart, the killing is just that. The current rock is like a butcher in the past, accustomed to nature. Pan Sure's thoughts only flashed by in a flash, as he was still killing monsters. However, at this time, Panshir also found some of his weaknesses through this slaughter, which is that his moves do not have any skills, but rely on his physical fitness. This situation is just a simple killing of monsters, but in the future, if you engage in combat with people, it is inevitable that problems will arise, so in the future, we need to cultivate martial arts skills and strengthen our combat abilities. At this point, Panshir had already killed many monsters, and there were also many monsters coming in this direction. Although Panshir could still kill for a while, it was no longer meaningful. After all, the first time Panshir came out to kill was just to adapt himself. Thinking of this, the ability of the rock to activate the ground instantly turned into a swamp. The monsters around the rock were sucked in and slowly sank underground, and the area around the rock was instantly cleared. With a wave of his hand, Panshir opened an air door and walked into it, while the circular saw continued to stay outside to kill monsters and earn energy. Panshir returned to his bunker and exchanged some water to clean himself. After putting on his pajamas and lying in bed, he began to think, at present, I only have physical fitness and the power of fruit, but I have not practiced yet. However, now I have a cultivation method, and it is still the cultivation method of Pangu Great God, and this cultivation method is different from what I thought. After all, the cultivation methods in the books I read have levels, while this cultivation method does not, and after flipping through it, Panshir also understood, for the chaotic demon gods nurtured by the Tao like Panshir, their cultivation methods are already inherent at birth, and there is no division of realms, so their cultivation methods have no hierarchy. After the opening of the heavens, the chaos demon god had already died, and only the martial arts of Pangu, the great god, had been passed down, and it was still incomplete. After the division of realms, I also divided the martial arts of the great god Pangu into different levels. Moreover, because the cultivation of the great god Pangu was the first batch of techniques, and at that time, the chaotic energy was strong, so the techniques were primitive and simple, just absorbing and refining. When the amount was enough, it naturally broke through the realm. However, later on, the chaotic energy of the heavens turned into spiritual energy, which made it difficult to cultivate the martial arts of the great god Pangu. But simplicity doesn't mean it's not strong, it's very strong, with a feeling of simplicity in simplicity. Moreover, because the great god cultivates and lives in chaos, he has reached the pinnacle of both physical and spiritual cultivation. However, the opposite is that this cultivation method only has no means in it, and in theory, this cultivation method has no upper limit. After learning about it, Panshir was also very surprised. Although there was no means, it was not much for Panshir. After all, he could exchange it himself. After understanding the martial arts, Panshir did not directly cultivate, but instead activated his talent to exchange for the three-colored dominance in the pirates and the swordsmanship cultivation method. Although Panshir used an axe to align with Pangu, the situation was similar. Later, the Panshir exchanged for another martial arts skill, Tiangang 36 axe, which was just a simple martial arts skill. After all, other Panshir couldn't afford to exchange it, and even if they had powerful divine spells, Panshir couldn't cast them at the beginning. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. We still need to kill monsters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, in this situation, Panshir is already very satisfied. After all, everyone is on the same starting line now. Due to his talent, Panshir's current situation seems to have surpassed most people. However, Panshir was not arrogant or complacent. After all, he was careful to sail a ship for thousands of years. Now, Panshir's situation is not the same as what he used to read in novels, but rather a real existence. In such a situation, it may not be possible to have all kinds of dragon arrogance like in the male protagonist of novels. After all, that's a novel, and it's better to keep it to a certain extent in the current situation. However, although Panshir wants to be a 6th-year-old, he still needs to roll up the scroll. After all, the current situation is not good and he will die, so, the rolling king Panshir is determined. After sorting out his current situation, Panshir lay in bed. After all, it was already very late now, and after experiencing so many things in a day, Pan Shi's heart was still very tired, and Pan Shi hasn't slept peacefully for a long time. After all, he couldn't sleep well when he got sick, and the subsequent freezing was even more so, so Pan Shi lay on the soft bed, knowing that this was probably his last sleep, but his heart was still very peaceful. Slowly, Pan Shi fell asleep, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The rest time always passes quickly. I don't know how long passed, but Pan Shi woke up from his sleep and slowly opened his eyes. After a brief moment of confusion, Pan Shi, who was completely awake, stretched out his lazy waist and sat up. After a night of recovery, Pan Shi has completely recovered. After all, after years of illness, Pan Shi has regained his resilient spirit and a very strong heart, allowing him to quickly accept the current situation. After getting up for a simple wash, I exchanged food in the mall. After all, the current Pan Shi has not yet cultivated enough to avoid eating. After breakfast, Pan Shi did not go out to kill monsters. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the bed and looked at his energy. After all, although Pan Shi was resting, the 4 circular saws did not rest. After a night of slaughter, the energy of Pan Shi is already very high. Pan Shi opened a door in the air and summoned 4 circular saws to fly in. After all, they also had to rest. At this moment, the circular saws turned dark red, with a bloody smell emanating from them. Pan Shi exchanged for clear water to activate the ability to thoroughly clean the circular saw, and then exchanged some special steel in the mall to elevate the circular saw to a lower level. After all, the previous circular saw was only ordinary steel, and you also need to upgrade afterwards. After all, monsters outside can also be upgraded. Afterwards, let the circular saw rest on the bed, and Pan Shi began to practice, slowly emptying the mind to eliminate distractions, slowly operating the techniques within the body, and because the techniques are directly transmitted to Pan Shi can start practicing directly. However, at this moment, Pan Shi discovered that there was not much spiritual energy in the air, but nothing at all. If energy was not needed in such a situation, pure cultivation would be impossible. Obviously, this situation is designed by the cosmic consciousness to prevent people from not killing monsters and only practicing blindly. Pan Shi also began to absorb energy and began practicing. After all, he didn't absorb much energy when he first started practicing, but this energy slowly runs through the body and is then absorbed by the body. The sublimation of life and the sense of power enhancement are truly intoxicating. No wonder cultivators are enthusiastic about practicing. After all, this feeling is really addictive. As time passed, Pan Shi continued to cultivate. At the same time, as the cultivation was on the right track, the speed of absorbing energy began to accelerate. At this time, Pan Shi's energy was also rapidly decreasing. After all, the technique of Pan Shi is not an ordinary one, it consumes a lot of energy. Pan Shi was not surprised to see such a situation, as it was already expected. However, energy still needs to be replenished. At this point, the circular saw had already rested, and Pan Shi sent them outside through the air door for them to kill monsters. And Pan Shi himself continued to enter a state of cultivation. The time of cultivation quietly passed, and the energy of the rock had already bottomed out. Although the circular saw was still killing monsters and accumulating energy, its speed was far from enough to meet the cultivation of the rock. Pan Shi also withdrew from his cultivation state, and after not practicing, he felt a sense of loss in his heart and a slight discomfort in his body. With this feeling, Pan Shi also understood why cultivators don't practice for long periods of time. One reason is that they don't have as much energy, and the other reason is that long-term cultivation can easily lead to mental problems, which can lead to the occurrence of becoming possessed by the devil. So after practicing for a period of time, it is necessary to practice martial arts or spells. One is to become proficient in combat methods, and the other is to get rid of the discomfort after practicing. Although there is a slight feeling in the soul here at Pan Shi, it does not have a significant impact, but this physical discomfort is not acceptable. After all, it affects combat effectiveness. Coincidentally, the energy is not enough. Pan Shi decided not to cultivate for a period of time before going to kill monsters. Firstly, he can accumulate energy. After all, relying solely on a circular saw is not enough for Pan Shi's cultivation, let alone other things, in a place where one can also practice martial arts skills to get rid of the discomfort after practice. After thinking of this, Pan Shi stood up and moved his body for a while. He changed into clothes, picked up his axe, and walked out of his bunker to the outside. At this point, the circular saw has attracted many monsters to come and kill, but there is also a benefit that the bodies of the monsters after killing are absorbed by the earth after a period of time, eliminated the time for Pan Shi to clean the battlefield, although it was not much trouble for Pan Shi. After Pan Shi appeared, he was targeted by the monster and rushed towards him, roaring and charging. Towards him, Pan Shi remained calm in the face of danger, wielding a large axe that flew up and down, killing any monsters that approached him. At the same time, when the circular saw the arrival of the rock, it automatically approached the rock, killing monsters around the rock while also protecting it. After all, the current Pan Shi himself also knows that although he can kill monsters, he has not reached the level of being experienced in countless battles, so it is necessary to be careful. While Pan Shi was killing, he also began to use his large axe, Tiangang 36 axe, to slowly converge, while also paying attention to the number of monsters. When the number was too large, Pan Shi would activate the power of the earth, causing all the monsters around him to sink underground, avoiding oneself from being surrounded while not delaying one's cultivation of martial arts skills also accelerates the accumulation of energy. The killing was carried out very smoothly with the help of a large number of monsters, and there was no delay in the execution of the stone-slaying skills. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Discovered a secret realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just as Pan Shi continued to kill monsters, a strange wave came from afar, and nearby monsters paused for a moment after the wave appeared, and this kind of fluctuation was also felt by the rock, but the rock did not check it immediately. Instead, it grabbed the monster and paused for an instant to activate its ability. In an instant, the soil under the rock's feet flowed like water, enveloping all nearby monsters and dragging them underground. The monster was no longer around this rock, and it was only then that the rock sensed the recent wave. This fluctuation is a force of space, but it is very weak, and in a weak state, it is also very unusual. Seeing such a situation, Pan Shi was also very curious in his heart, but he did not recklessly go and check it, but first activate the ability to enter the air door before rushing towards the direction of the waves. Due to the long distance, Pan Shi was also searching by the roadside. After all, it was just a wave and nothing came from it. It took Pan Shi a while to find it, and it was only after Pan Shi's ability to activate space that he finally found it. In front of the presented rock is a chaotic vortex with a diameter of about 1 meter, and waves of spatial power are transmitted from the vortex, which is very weak. In such a situation, it may not be possible to detect it without spatial perception. Seeing such a strange sight, although Pan Shi was very curious, he did not rush forward to check. After all, recklessly touching and putting oneself in danger without determining what this thing is a very irrational behavior. At this moment, the consciousness of the universe suddenly transmitted a message to Pan Shi. After receiving the message, Pan Shi also understood what the thing in front of him was. The vortex in front of us is a space secret realm composed of space debris caused by the collision of many universes. There are many such spatial secret realms, and the situations inside are also diverse. However, if someone from this universe conquers the spatial secret realm, the consciousness of this universe will absorb this secret realm to strengthen itself, and at the same time give rewards to those who conquer the secret realm. If other universes occupy it first, they can use this secret realm to make a transition and appear in this universe. However, the specific level of access depends on the strength of this space secret realm. After understanding this situation, although Pan Shi knew what the vortex in front of him was, he did not rashly enter the exploration. After all, who knows if there is any danger? Although it is known from the information that the secret realm in front of us is just formed, the specific situation inside is unclear. However, Pan Shi has no intention of giving up on this secret realm. After all, it is also a very interesting thing, and if conquered, there will be rewards. In such a situation, Pan Shi naturally needs to explore it carefully. However, Pan Shi did not directly go in person, but instead allowed the two circular saws beside him to enter. At the same time, Pan Shi could also use their eyes to see the situation at dawn and decide whether to enter, and even if it's very dangerous inside and you lose two circular saws and stones, it doesn't hurt, thinking that the two circular saws had already flown into the vortex and nothing had happened, they smoothly entered it. This also indicates that the channel of this secret realm is very stable. After the circular saw entered it, Pan Shi also closed his eyes and connected to the circular saw. Suddenly, a picture came through. At first, Pan Shi didn't quite adapt, but after reading for a while, he got used to it. At this moment, Pan Shi also saw clearly the situation inside the secret realm, and the extremely desolate land area was also very large, with no visible edges at a glance. However, no creatures were seen, and Pan Shi did not relax. He controlled the circular saw to fly high in the sky and began to explore the surroundings. After the circular saw flew out not far, Pan Shi saw smoke and dust rising not far ahead, indicating a situation on the other side. Seeing this situation, Pan Shi knew there was a situation over there and quickly controlled the circular saw to fly in this direction. In no time, they arrived nearby, and Pan Shi also saw the situation clearly. There were more than 10 insect-like creatures on the ground besieging 5 local monsters. Pan Shi was also curious when he saw this situation. He looked at it with peace of mind, and in no time, the 5 monsters had already been killed, and those insects dragged the monster's body in one direction. Pan Shi didn't disturb them, so he followed in the air to see where they were going. After walking for a while, I saw them enter a cave, and Pan Shi quickly followed them in, carefully following them. After walking in the tunnel for a while, Pan Shi finally appeared in a huge underground space. At this point, Pan Shi also saw the situation clearly. In the center of the underground, there was a very fat bug eating the monster's corpse, and there are obviously many hunting monster teams like Pan Shi who come and go to transport the monster's body to that chubby bug. Pan Shi also understood the situation of this secret realm when he saw this, and the current swarm of insects is very similar to a race called the Zerg that Pan Shi knows, and judging from the situation here, we know that there may not be anything else in this secret realm. Except for these insects. After all, they have already been eaten. However, despite understanding the basic information, Pan Shi did not relax and began to explore carefully in this underground cave, trying to understand the situation as much as possible. After a long period of exploration, Pan Shi has roughly understood the situation here. It must be said that the combat power of insects may not be very high, but the number is really large. Just the rock alone probably amounts to 100,000, and it's only a lot more. I don't know which universe the space debris in this secret realm belongs to. After understanding the situation, Pan Shi will control the circular saw to return to its original path before making any plans. After all, there are really many insects inside, so it is obviously unrealistic to rush in and kill them directly, and we cannot let it go. After all, if insects leave the secret realm at their reproductive speed, their numbers are likely to increase. The situation will not be good then, so these insects must be eliminated, but the specific methods still need to be carefully considered. The circular saw returned smoothly to Pan Shi's side, and Pan Shi was also considering what to do. After all, currently thermal weapons are ineffective and explosives are useless. Although I have the ability to control the earth, my control range is clearly not as wide. Moreover, these insects can still make holes, and simply burying them alive may lead to fish escaping the net. After much thought, Pan Shi couldn't come up with any good method, and in the end, he decided to follow the dumbest method, that's just killing slowly. Anyway, these bugs also have energy, so let's just treat them as killing monsters. Anyway, it's just a matter of slowing down. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. Massive Pesticide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thinking of this, Panshir didn't hesitate and walked out of the air door with a circular saw into the vortex. A feeling of weightlessness came, but in just an instant, the rock had already arrived in the secret realm. Although there were no insects around, Panshir still maintained a high level of vigilance, as safety was the top priority. After identifying the direction, the rock flew towards the cave it had seen before, and soon arrived near the cave. At this time, insects could still be seen entering and exiting the cave entrance, some even carrying the bodies of monsters. After arriving nearby, Panshir did not rush to land on the ground, but instead surveyed the nearby terrain from high altitude. Panshir simply looked at it and didn't rush to start a monster. This kind of bug has never fought before, so he can definitely kill it himself when the time comes. However, not taking action on the rock does not mean that the circular saw will not be allowed to take action. With a thought in his heart, Panshir Saw already knew that he had looked at his task, but even if you want to kill insects, you can't kill them at their doorstep. In an instant, the circular saws roared away, successfully catching the attention of the insects after provoking them. At this moment, the circular saw began to slowly provoke and move towards the distance. After moving away from the cave, the circular saw suddenly exerted force, and a few insects were completely decomposed by the circular saw. Broken limbs and debris were everywhere, but this is also intentional. After all, we can't always go to the entrance of the mountain to provoke, right? It's better to let the insects come to find themselves for convenience, as the bloody smell of the few insects killed now will definitely attract more insects. In this way, Panshir only needs to stay in place and wait for rabbits, and once the situation is not right, he can still run away, so as not to be surrounded at the doorstep of others. Sure enough, as expected by the rock, a few more insects appeared in no time, and the circular saw began to brutally kill, attracting more insects. At this point, Panshir also landed on the ground holding a large axe and began to fight against the insects. After all, there are fewer insects now, making it easier to mature. After a while, when more insects arrive, Panshir's unfamiliarity with the insects can easily lead to problems. After killing a few insects, Panshir discovered that the defense and attack power of this insect were only normal and not too outrageous. However, because this thing is fierce and fearless, and with a large number of them, if we charge together, even if we drag it, it will drag us to death, so Panshir will now engage in close combat with a small number of insects to familiarize himself with their combat style and enrich his combat style. When a large number of insects come to kill, Panshir also needs to use his abilities. After all, what Panshir needs to do now is to kill all the insects and conquer this space secret realm, so it must focus on annihilation. The brutal slaughter is still ongoing, but by this time the insects have already reacted, with a large number of insects surrounding towards the direction of the rock. Upon seeing such a situation, Panshir knew he couldn't kill alone. With a flash of his body, the elemental light instantly flew into the sky. As soon as Panshir left, a large number of insects had already surrounded this place. Panshir didn't hesitate to see a large number of insects gathering below, and his hands crossed his body, transforming into a cross star hanging in the sky due to the emission of a large amount of light. In an instant, yellow light and rain had already poured down, and explosions could occur when in contact with insects or the ground. Suddenly, a large number of insects had already been killed. However, after playing a major move, Panshir stopped continuing his attack. After all, this kind of big move is still very tiring for the current Panshir, and after waiting for more insects to come, we will have to amplify the move, and the fish that managed to survive the big move, Panshir, has been cleared by the circular saw. And the big movement on this side of the rock has already caught the attention of the insect nest, and suddenly a large number of insects rushed out of the cave towards the rock. I believe that insects outside will also rush over when they notice the movement here. Panshir also activates his ability to generate a cloud under his feet, and he sits on the cloud to rest in the air. After all, Panshir needs to preserve his stamina, as the number of insects alone cannot be killed in a short time. However, Panshir is also prepared, but the speed of the killing cannot be slowed down. After all, who knows if there will be any variables over time. At this moment, in Panshir's eyes, a dense swarm of insects had already arrived on the earth. Even if Panshir's heart is very big, seeing such a situation will not make Panshir's scalp tingle. and he will have a dense phobia. However, since the insects had already arrived in front of Pancher, he didn't waste his time and launched a carpet-style bombing. The scene of light and rain washing the ground and the severed limbs on the ground formed a face of apocalypse. After cleaning a piece of worms, the rock was not let down by the circular saw to pick up the leak. After all, just as a piece of rock was cleared, it was filled with insects the next moment. However, Pancher's ultimate move is not always used, as Pancher also needs to catch his breath and ensure the density of insects, which can ensure that Pancher's ultimate move can kill as many insects as possible. Just like this, the intensity of the earthquake exploded and large areas of insects were killed. Just like this, Pancher unilaterally slaughtered, but even though these insects were very fierce and fearless, they had already begun to retreat under the death of a large number of insects. After all, they could not attack the enemy, when Pancher had already released 10 major moves. These insects retreated and took away a large number of insect corpses. After all, there is no such thing as these insects not eating their own tribe, and Pancher did not stop him from facing such a situation. After all, even if these insects were all taken back and eaten, they could not strengthen their combat effectiveness in a short period of time, and Pancher is constantly killing here, and he doesn't want to give the insects time to react. However, now that the bug has retreated, the rock can also rest for a while. After all, this situation of constantly amplifying moves is also very tiring for the rock. Just cultivate and restore stamina on the clouds with a sample rock, and at the same time send out a circular saw to clean up the undead insects below. Coming here, so Pancher plans to switch to a different place to kill insects, and during the search time, Pancher will try his best to recover his strength. After all, this is also energy, and it's not the attack of a rock. Death monsters have no energy, and mosquito legs are also flesh when small. The rock doesn't intend to let go. At the same time, it also made the circular saw look for other holes. After all, because the stone has killed a large number of insects here, and now those insects are not there. Moreover, due to the powerful skill of the stone, and the fact that the stone has just been cultivated, its physical strength is still very easy to recover. Moreover, once the stone has truly achieved cultivation, it can use magic instead of physical strength to cast methods. Now that Pancher has just started practicing, he can only use his physical strength for now. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. A great move to wash the floor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. During the practice of Pancher, the circular saw had already killed all the undead insects below and started searching for other holes, and just as Pancher's stamina had recovered to 70.8%, the circular saw returned and found another hole. Pancher controlled the white clouds under him to fly towards the direction of the hole found by the circular saw. After flying a long distance, Pancher finally saw the cave entrance. Pancher didn't move forward either. After surveying the nearby terrain, he chose the back of a low mountain and as usual, let the circular saw provoke the insects near the cave entrance, and Pancher is waiting here. In no time, about 10 insects were lured over, but this time the rock was not killed by the circular saw. Instead, the insects were instantly killed by the laser beam, causing a devastating explosion, and the movements happening here will definitely attract a large number of insects to check. As expected, the sound of the explosion and the vibration of the ground on this side attracted a large number of insects rushing towards the rock, and they continued to crawl out of the cave. Moreover, there were a large number of them, and the ground shook due to the running of insects. Upon seeing this situation, Pancher did not immediately take action, but waited for the insects to gather. A large number of insects had already gathered at the foot of Pancher without letting him wait for too long. They roared and waved their sharp forelimbs at Pancher, demonstrating towards him. Pancher couldn't get used to it either. When he saw that the recharge had almost gathered, he immediately resorted to a big move. Light and rain washed the ground, and in an instant, flames exploded everywhere, killing a large number of insects. Even if some were not killed by the explosion, they were trampled to death by the insects rushing up from behind, and at this time, the rock was unable to be harvested by the circular saw. It could only be treated as a normal loss for killing monsters. The sound of explosions kept coming, and the remnants of the insect's limbs and arms were also flying around, bringing the rock with crazily increasing energy, and the energy of this bug far exceeds that of the monsters native to Blue Star. However, Panshir also understood that the local monsters of Blue Star were like the monsters in a novice village, which allowed players to pass the novice period and also train their skills and courage, and in the future, the Panshir will face creatures from other universes, such as these insects, so it's normal for Panshir to have more energy than local monsters. After killing for a while, the nearby insects retreated into the hole where they couldn't reach the rock. Panshir saw this and had no intention of chasing after him. Instead, he changed his direction and continued to search for the cave for a fishing-style ambush. However, after 2 consecutive attempts at fishing in Panshir, these insects were no longer fooled when they switched places to fish. However, this situation was expected by Panshir, as such a massive race would have been eliminated long ago without any intelligence, but now these insects can all develop into such a population, and obviously have a very high level of intelligence. However, these ordinary insects obviously cannot have such wisdom. In this case, they are probably the fat queen of the Zerg tribe that Panshir saw deep in the cave. Seeing that the killing cannot continue now, although Panshir can wait for some time for these insects to relax their vigilance before killing. Obviously this situation is a waste of time, and Panshir doesn't want to waste too much time here. In this case, Panshir needs to come up with a way to launch a large-scale attack tonight to inflict heavy damage on these insects, while killing the mother worms to make those unwise insects go completely crazy. This way, the insects will definitely attack the Panshir crazily and may not necessarily retreat, so as not to delay the Panshir's killing. Thinking of this, Panshir came up with a method. The ability of Panshir to activate condenses a soil ball that directly exceeds 50 meters on the ground, and the hard rock is wrapped around the outside of the soil ball. After the condensation was completed, the rock unleashed its ability to fly into the sky with the soil ball. After flying several thousand meters, the rock stopped. It's not that he doesn't want to fly up anymore, but Panshir has already done his best, but this altitude is obviously enough. After aiming at the location, Panshir used his ability to push the earth ball and increased its speed. Then Panshir quickly hid inside the air door, and the power of the earth ball did not disappoint Panshir. The huge ball smashed fiercely into the ground, and the huge shockwave caused the ground to shake suddenly. At the same time, the strong wind blew up the dust in the sky. However, because the rock is hidden inside the air door and has no significant impact, the effect of this scene is obviously very good. Under such an attack, the worm mother will definitely die, but if she doesn't die, Panshir can only sigh that the other party is really lucky. Then he tried to find a way to kill the other person. After all, it was impossible to keep them alive. During the waiting time, Panshir also seized the opportunity to recover his physical strength, and as he watched his explosive energy growth, he knew that this attack was obviously a foolish insect. The rapid movement of the Panshir technique is restoring energy, while waiting for the outside movement to calm down. At that time, I'm afraid all the insects will rush out, and it seems like it's time to harvest the rocks. Just as Panshir regained his strength, the smoke and dust outside had not dissipated, but the ground vibrations had already subsided. A large number of insects can be seen rushing out of the ground with the naked eye, and from their roaring and panicking appearance, it is clear that the mother insect is dead, and under such an impact, it is obvious that the insect eggs underground cannot be preserved. In this situation, these insects are obviously very angry. However, Panshir did not go out to kill at this time, but was recovering his strength. After all, it is still necessary to be careful to maintain sufficient physical strength. As time passed, Panshir's physical strength also returned to its peak. Panshir also stood up and walked out of the air space, appearing in the sky without the insects noticing, and after the rock came out, it was also a direct move for the light rain to start washing the ground. By the time the insects discovered the rock in the sky, the light rain had already fallen on the ground, and an instant explosion took away a large number of insect lives. The ultimate move of the rock this time is not to stop, it just keeps firing. After all, the insects on the ground are already very dense. After the slaughter, just move it a bit and there's no need to wait for the insects to gather together. However, Panshir's physical strength was also rapidly decreasing, but he didn't care either. When the stamina is about to bottom out, it will return to the air space for recovery, and then come out to kill. In the secret realm space, there is no distinction between day and night, because the secret realm is always bright and the passage of time cannot be felt inside. Under the slaughter of Panshir, the ground was already riddled with wounds and holes, and some of the insect limbs were burning on the scorched ground. The green insect blood and mucus organs thoroughly polluted the ground. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. Conquering Space and Redefining Rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And under the relentless slaughter of Panshir, the number of insects had already decreased significantly, and they were already afraid of being killed. The insects have started to flee towards all sides now. When Panshir saw such a situation, he also hurriedly pursued and wanted to completely kill these insects. However, before Panshir could take action, a message had already been transmitted to him. After receiving the information, Panshir also understood that conquering a space secret realm did not mean clearing all the creatures inside. As long as he could eliminate the powerful creatures inside, or clear the population inside the secret realm so that there were no masters in the entire secret realm, it was enough. At this point, cosmic consciousness will step forward to absorb this spatial secret realm to strengthen itself. Panshir already understood from here, but this is also quite good. After all, if we really want to kill all of these insects, it would be a considerable project. After all, these insects are not managed by the parent insects now, they are fleeing in all directions, which is very troublesome to find and kill them. Just as Panshir relaxed, a sudden feeling of weightlessness struck in front of him. Before Panshir could react and defend himself, Panshir's entire being has been transferred out of the space realm by the cosmic consciousness that has already taken over the space realm. At this moment, Panshir was standing at the entrance of the space secret realm, watching with his own eyes as if the entrance of the space secret realm had been assimilated, gradually fading into the air and disappearing. The entire process didn't take much time, and although Panshir was curious about how cosmic consciousness refined the secret realm of space, but obviously, this is no longer something that Panshir can know now. However, Panshir is just curious and has no intention of delving deeper into research. Now, Panshir is more concerned about the reward for conquering the entire secret realm. The information has already been transmitted without the consciousness of Panshir waiting in the universe for a long time, which can meet one of Panshir's requirements, but not too outrageous. At the same time, the consciousness of the universe will be reasonably satisfied based on the size and quality of the space secret realm you conquer. Seeing such a situation, Panshir is also quite confused. After all, Panshir will exchange everything he wants through talent. Now it seems that this is another manifestation of his talent. Although Panshir thinks so, this reward is still very superior. After all, not everyone is like Panshir. As long as they have energy, they can have almost anything. Panshir thought to himself for a moment about what he needed now. After all, he still had to start from reality. Although he could ask for some high-end things, it would not be of any help to Panshir now. It may also drag down the current rock, and one's own means are not lacking. What one lacks now is actually the most basic thing. After figuring out what he wanted, Panshir didn't hesitate and immediately stated his requirements. I want to exchange all of this reward for energy. After receiving Panshir's request, the cosmic consciousness did not respond and directly agreed to Panshir's request. At the same time, when Panshir saw the agreement of the cosmic consciousness, his energy directly increased by 10 million, which made Panshir marvel at the high efficiency. However, Panshir is also very happy. After all, with so much energy now added to the energy earned by killing insects in the space secret realm, I can already make my cultivation an entry point. After all, the technique of Panshir is strong, but it also consumes a lot of energy to practice, and now everyone should be killing monsters and accumulating energy for cultivation. And now with the blessing of this 10 million yuan of energy, I should be able to lead 90% of the people, so that my safety is guaranteed. Pancher also quickly sensed his space markers in the bunker when he thought of this, and his activation ability teleported back to his own bunker. However, Pancher did not directly start practicing. After all, his mood is unstable now, and starting practicing now is not beneficial for himself, so Pancher first exchanged water for a good wash, then exchanged food for a good meal, and finally came to bed, sitting cross-legged but unable to do so before practicing. Pancher still released the circular saw to kill monsters. Although he is now full of energy, he cannot sit idly by. After everything was handled properly at this point, Pancher entered a state of cultivation, and a large amount of energy quickly flowed into Pancher's body, which was then refined by Pancher's operational techniques to strengthen his body. The time for cultivation always passes quickly, and 7 days have already passed in a blink of an eye. The cultivation of Pancher is also very smooth due to a large amount of energy blessing, successfully crossing the stage of refining essence and entering the initial stage of chi cultivation, and now, compared to before, the rock is also a bit stronger, but the energy is also digested a lot, consuming a total of 8 million energy. However, the advantage is that due to its abundant energy, the cultivation foundation of Pancher is very solid, which is also very beneficial for future cultivation. And afterwards, Pancher cannot continue to practice. After all, there is still energy Pancher that can be practiced continuously. However, while such a long period of cultivation brings benefits, the downside is that the Pancher cannot effectively control its current power, so Pancher stopped practicing and digested it well, and the best way to adapt is to fight. So Pancher also put on the Black Panther battle suit he exchanged for himself. After all, ordinary clothes cannot be worn directly after a battle due to the blood splattered on his body by killing monsters, and the armor is inconvenient, so the exchanged Black Panther battle suit can just solve this situation, and Pancher now believes in the strength of his body after cultivation, but Pancher doesn't mind adding a layer of protection to himself. After packing up the rocks, Pancher left the bunker and attracted a large number of monsters to the circular saw. With a wave of his axe, Pancher rushed forward, flipping up and down in his hands. The approaching monster was suddenly chopped into pieces by the flying axe, with blood splattering everywhere. Occasionally, flying slashes flew out of the axe, and the monsters along the way were cut off by the waist. The terrifying scene also made people shudder, and Pancher had already entered a state of excitement in the crazy slaughter, and his hand movements were becoming more and more sharp. In such a crazy slaughter, Pancher is also quickly adapting to his own strength and becoming more proficient in attacks. A day was spent in the killing of monsters by Pancher, because the successful cultivation of Pancher also greatly increased his physical strength, resulting in Pancher and monsters fighting for a whole day without exhausting their energy. However, Pancher also stopped killing monsters and entered the bunker to wash and eat before entering a state of cultivation to restore the energy and spirit consumed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.